And I'm back for another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. Today we'll be taking a look at one of the latest box set releases as a part of the January 2019 range, and it is the Diary of River Song Series 5, which is in fact a first for this channel, as I have never covered the Diary of River Song spin-off series ever before in reviews, simply because I don't really like River Song too much. I think that within the TV show, she got a little bit irritating, especially within the 11th Doctor era, and I kind of felt like her main purpose was to be a plot point, especially throughout Doctor Who Series 6, which is probably my least favourite season from new series Doctor Who. So when Big Finish got the new series licence and they announced that they were going to be doing a spin-off dedicated to River Song, it was quite inevitable, but also it was an easy choice for me to kind of not listen to that series, simply because I don't really like the main protagonist. However, of course, I have actually witnessed River Song on Big Finish before. She did appear in the 8th Doctor Adventures of Doom Coalition, and I must admit I did in fact find her escapades with the 8th Doctor rather tolerable. I thought that Big Finish were doing something with her character that was rather interesting, and I think that Alex Kingston certainly suited the audio drama format. However, it still didn't make me want to go out of my way to actually listen to her own spin-off series. But Big Finish being Big Finish, they like to involve everything in everything, and certainly like to persuade different areas of the fandom, which does of course bring me to today's review, as I'm going to be taking a look at the 5th series for the simple fact that it includes Derek Jacobi as the War Master, because of course previously last year I did review the Master of Callus, I did also review Gallifrey Time War Volume 1, and the year before that I also reviewed the War Master, Only the Good. All three of those box sets, as well as Unit Cyber Reality, have all been brilliant, simply because Derek Jacobi has been in them. He is an absolutely superb and evil Master, and to be quite honest, I wanted to hear more of him, even though it's only one episode. However, I imagine that this box set in particular may in fact encourage some of the classic fans to actually cave in, because there is 4 stories on this box set, and all 4 of them feature a different incarnation of the Master, which is a rather intriguing concept, and certainly a first for Big Finish, and a great way to start the 20th anniversary of audio dramas. First off, and as always in the description below, I will leave the link to go and buy this release from the Big Finish website. It is currently out now. The physical CD is £23 and the download is £20, and it is in fact exclusive to the Big Finish website up until the end of March 31st, 2019. So basically, if you like what you hear throughout this review, and if you like the trailer and all the information on the Big Finish website, I certainly recommend picking it up before it goes up in price. I do believe this box set is in fact a very similar format to that of the previous Diary of River Song series. So we start off with episode 1, which is the Bechdel test, as written by Jonathan Morris, featuring Michelle Gomez as of course the latest incarnation of the Master, or Missy. And then we also have episode 2, which is Animal Instinct, as written by Roy Gill, and features the return of Geoffrey Beevers as the decaying Crispy Master, which is certainly the Master that does appear quite a lot through Big Finish. He is almost the Big Finish Master. And then we have episode 3, which is the Lifeboat and the Death Boat, as written by Eddie Robson, and rather excitingly features the return of Eric Roberts as the Master as seen in the 8th Doctor movie back in 1996, and this is in fact his first ever return back to the role as the Master, I do believe in over 22 years, which is quite a big deal. It is intriguing to see him back. He is a rather controversial incarnation of the Master, to say the least. And finally, for episode 4, we are ending off on the best Master for Big Finish. It is of course Concealed Weapon, as written by Scott Hancock, featuring Derek Jacobi as the War Master, which is very exciting indeed. This whole box set is directed by Ken Bentley. We also have the producer being David Richardson, the script editor Matt Fitton, and as per usual the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haig Ellery. I am in fact going to approach this review a little bit differently, simply because River Song is in absolutely every single story. I'm going to talk about her character overall first, because she's pretty much the same character through each story. It is nice to see that we are approaching River Song from different aspects of her life. We have a few of the early years in Stormcage, then we have a little bit of her being the archaeologist, and then a bit of her in the later life as well. However, all of her character and her different states of life are pretty much exactly the same. I do think that Alex Kingston is a good actress. When I started this review and I did say that I didn't particularly like River Song too much, I'm in no way saying that I don't like Alex Kingston, because I think that she's an excellent actress and she does great throughout this box set, and without a doubt I think that her previous uses in Big Finish as well are no doubt are also very good. However, her character for me is just something that doesn't sit with me too well. I don't know what it is, I just don't like her personality too much. However, Alex Kingston seems really lovely and a really nice person. I think the River Song that we see throughout this box set is certainly a little bit of a different version that we see throughout new series Doctor Who, simply because the Doctor is no longer present. She's the main protagonist, it is now her show, not the Doctor's, meaning that she needs to control the stage and basically be the most important character in the story, which is in fact incredibly hard, especially in the context of this box set, when each episode has a different incarnation of a rather powerful renegade Time Lord. Of course, due to her being the same character that we see in new series Doctor Who, there is exactly the same traits that you do see in new series stories, and I think that Big Finish and the writing team behind the series have done a very good job of capturing that character and the way that Stephen Moffat actually presented River Song in his series as well. And I think that River in this series does have a few of those quirky moments, like spoilers, so having that underlining power that she doesn't necessarily need to impose. However, you know that she can in fact do things, you know that she is a threat, and she doesn't always exercise that. So the first episode of the box set is the Bechdel test, as written by Jonathan Morris, and this episode features Michelle Gomez as Missy, which is lovely. I've always wanted Big Finish to actually get hold of Missy at some point, simply because I think they could do quite a lot with her character, and also if they manage to get John Sim at some point, I know there is quite a lot of stuff that they could do to fill in certain points of the narrative that we didn't get within new series Doctor Who, such as the regeneration scene between John Sim and Missy, and how that incarnation in fact came to be, and also at the end of World Enough and Time as well, and maybe even covering where her TARDIS is, because we do get the odd reference to it here and there. However, we never actually see it, no doubt for budget reasons. Of course, this is only Missy's first outing with Big Finish. In February, I do believe it is, we in fact get a whole box set of Missy's adventures, which I'm very much looking forward to that. And this episode is mainly around the early life of River Song. She has just been put into prison in Stormcage, and she's kind of learning the ropes of that environment, and she is notorious for escaping, much like how she did quite a lot throughout Series 6 of Doctor Who in order to see the Doctor here and there, and therefore she has gained quite a reputation, and this different other prison facility wants to in fact imprison her and see if she can escape in order to become one of the most powerful prisons in the known universe. And of course throughout this episode River Song is accompanied by Missy, because both of them know the Doctor, and it in fact turns out that the trying to break out idea that is the main premise of the early half of this episode is kind of just a shadowing overplot for the main truth of this episode, that is in fact this company that is behind the prison wanting to know if the 11th Doctor is dead or not, because this episode in fact takes place throughout Series 6, which is really intriguing. I think that this is the first ever time that Big Finish have actually directly addressed a plot arc or a script that has been seen in new series Doctor Who, and Jonathan Morris has done a very good job of actually incorporating that into the story and delivering a different context to the events of Series 6 that we didn't in fact see. There is in fact a very interesting relationship that Missy has with River Song, simply because they are very similar. They are both very psychopathic and they both know the Doctor, and Missy is in fact jealous that River has in fact killed the Doctor because she wanted to do it. And I think that it is a wonderful relationship, because I think it is fair to say that they both almost have respect for each other. They're kind of like sisters that both really hate each other, but also at the same time respect each other's power, and that is something that is seen throughout this episode and works really well. And what I think is a good benefit for this story is it's a nice way to kickstart the box set. It is a very easy listen, and the narrative itself is incredibly self-explanatory. Now moving on to the second episode of the box set, we have Animal Instinct as written by Roy Gill. Now this episode does in fact feature Jeffrey Beavers as the Decaying Master, or as how River refers to him as, the crispy looking master. So crispy is in fact now a canon term that is being used, which I think that Jeffrey Beavers, once again, he's a flawless incarnation of the master. I think that if it wasn't for Derek Jacobi, he is very much up there, as well as Alex McQueen. I think that Big Finish just do a very good job at evil renegade Time Lords. Look at the 11 and look at the 9 and look at the 10. They are all phenomenal in their own way. Even the 12, very good ways of handling female renegade Time Lords. And I think that he is just a master in this story that you respect because he is callous, he is evil, but also at the same time he is weak and he is suffering and he is quite obviously in pain, but he still has the upper hand against everybody. You know that he is one step ahead because he has thought out everything and every possible route and expectation that could possibly go right or wrong. And I love the way that this episode in fact starts off. It is based on this planet where you have almost this mythical or religious backstory, and you have the equivalent of almost tombs, a bit like the pyramids and the Incas, kind of. It's like weird historical architecture, and it turns out this tomb has been set up by the Master, expecting that the Doctor will eventually turn up, but instead we get River Song turning up, and we have a lovely resurrection moment where Jeffrey Beavers in fact thinks that the person that is working alongside River is the Doctor because he is wearing tweed and like a really quirky looking hat. So yeah, a rather funny episode I think to start off with, and once again the relationship between River and the Master in this story is polar opposite to Michelle Gomez. Once again, the relationship that River Song has with the Decaying Master in this episode is in fact completely polar opposite to that of River and Missy in the previous story, and that is something that is pretty much represented throughout all 4 episodes. Even though you have River meeting the Master in every single story, it is still a completely different atmosphere because the different incarnations are so different in their own right. In this story, River Song does in fact take on the more archaeological lecturing role, as she has got this student that she's trying to educate and test, and he is in fact called Luke Sullivan, and he is played by Timothy Blaw. And I think that he was a really nice contribution to the story because he felt like somebody who was innocent, and he was within this situation with 2 people that know exactly what is going on, and I think that the listener can very much almost hop on the story with his character and almost see it from his perspective, which I think is really nice. And as per usual, this version of the Master is deadly. I think it's no spoiler in saying he does kill people, he kills quite a lot, but also at the same time he is responsible for this creation of this rather monstrous species that have developed over time. Once again, very much something that the Master would do, intervene and basically create something simply for the evil of it, which I do like this story. I think that I always respect what Roy Gill does. I think that he has a very intelligent way of presenting Doctor Who stories. I don't doubt the way that he presents. I think that the wonderful way that he creates his scripts is very nice. I respect that. However, those other elements that are almost added on top of the storyline just make it a little bit more cluttered and maybe a little bit more confusing than it in fact needs to be. There is also a really lovely scene at the very end of this story that I am briefly going to touch on because of course Jeffrey Beavers' Master is very good at doing the thing where he stares at people very evilly and does that "I am the Master and you will obey," much like how Derek Jacobi does as well. He is very good and very persuasive and hypnotic. It was really lovely to see that incorporated into the episode, but interestingly the Master was in fact unable to hypnotise River, which I thought was very unusual. Maybe shown that she does in fact have some power in there. It did also seem a little bit angry that she is in fact the Doctor's wife, which I thought was a bit odd. Maybe he's a bit jealous, I don't know. But also in another universe he's kind of his brother, so we're kind of going into a little bit of a dodgy territory. Episode 3, we have the Lifeboat and the Death Boat, as written by Eddie Robson, featuring Eric Roberts as the Serpent Master, I'm going to call him, because the Master incarnations don't really seem to have numbers. And to be quite honest, I never expected to see him again when it comes to Doctor Who. I thought that was it. I actually thought for legal reasons we would never see him again. Eric Roberts in this story, I didn't quite know what to expect, because a lot of people wanted Big Finish to almost give his master a new life, because it will be fair to say that his master is probably one of the least favourite, simply because he is very theatrical, very pantomime, and much like the rest of the movie itself, it is rather over the top. I simply only need to raise my hand like this and say I only dress for the occasion, you know, and then that's pretty much everything about his master. He's over the top, he is different, and this episode takes that on board. There's in fact a few themes throughout this episode that are very reminiscent to the movie. We have a few themes to America, which I thought was a really lovely touch, and we also have, once again, River Song becoming almost that archaeologist that is going around space on her own adventures by herself. However, she comes across a few people here and there that she almost takes under her wing and wants to help when she in fact comes into difficulty, which I thought was a really nice moment in this story. There is a little bit of a twist moment Eddie Robson has written in, which I must admit I did in fact pick up on quite early on, only because I was in fact looking on the Big Finish website at the time of listening to this story, and I realised something. I'm not going to reference what, just in case you don't in fact realise yourself whilst listening, but basically one of the twists. It was a nice moment still. I think that River's reaction was very cool and rather worrying at the same time. You thought that she actually felt like she was at threat, she was in danger, because this version of the Master is kind of on bare minimum. He is scavenging very much in order to try and get back into the universe. There's also a moment that explains how his master actually escaped the Doctor's TARDIS from the end of the movie, which of course a lot of people will be very happy with, because that is a part of Doctor Who history that we didn't really know too much about. Of course, that little shady area between Eric Roberts and Alex McQueen, and then Geoffrey Beevers coming back being sort of the decayed Master point 2, and then onto the War Master himself. So this episode is very much a filling the plot hole story, which is what I like. I like Big Finish when they do that, because a lot of fans will be interested to find out what happened to the Master and how he survived, and it's nice to finally have the answer to that. The actual main cast for this story is a very small one. You literally have River Song, the father figure in this story, as well as the almost daughter figure that is the American element of this episode, that is pretty much playing a stereotype. She's called Alison, as portrayed by Lucy Heath, and I really did enjoy her in the story. Once again, she was almost an anchor point to the movie, having a little bit of context in there, and almost something for that body that the Master is using to kind of hold on to, because we need to remember that this incarnation of the Master isn't a natural incarnation. It is a body that he is using as a host, much like Anthony Ainley's Master. Of course, Tremus, I do believe he was called, from Traken. He was stealing that body as well. He is very much a scavenger, and that is seen throughout this episode. The way that we have River encountering these two people that are basically living on the bare minimum in this pretty much knackered spaceship, and they're using tractor beams to bring in other elements of spaceships that have crashed in order to use those different parts to basically make a patchwork spaceship that will hopefully get them out of the time vortex. It is a really nice sort of referencing to the Master story. It is very much of his character, and the vortex itself, we have this rather unusual creature that is in the vortex, which is once again a serpent style creature, which we didn't really have too much about that. I think the enemy of this episode was almost rather underplayed. It's also this other group of people in this story that are basically using this time-travelling spaceship in order to meet one of their own aims, which didn't really have much of an effect on the actual narrative itself, and I did think that maybe they were a little bit irrelevant, and I did think that maybe it would have been more effective to have this episode be a 3 or 4 hander and maybe ditch the other team that is in this actual story, just to maybe give the Master a little bit more prominence, especially with it being Eric Roberts, considering that we've literally not seen him since Doctor Who the movie. River Song is also travelling by vortex vortex manipulator in this episode, which is a rather lacklustre way of travelling around. She does in fact find herself in a little bit of trouble, and then the scavengers actually sort of take her out of the vortex before she does essentially die, and she kind of feels like she needs to repair them by helping them find the parts, and she realises that the Master is in fact clinging onto the destroyed remains of a room from a TARDIS, which does once again link into the way that he in fact escaped the TARDIS as seen in the 8th Doctor movie, which is a really nice way to kind of fill in that plot thread. The Master himself, I think, was interesting. He wasn't particularly standout or anything like that. I think that by far he was my sort of least favourite Master of this box set. That said, Eric hasn't done this since the movie back in 1996. Arguably he probably hasn't even looked back on his portrayal in the movie either. He kind of strikes me as an actor that probably wouldn't reflect on his previous performances and see how he actually played them back in that time. I can't even recall the Master from the movie too much because I've not seen it in many years. But yeah, I was maybe just expecting, I don't know, something a bit more. It might leave a few people a bit disappointed because they might expect this big, massive, redeeming story that is worth bearing in mind that you are comparing the Master as Eric Roberts to Derek Jacobi, an award-winning actor, along with Michelle Gomez, a rather psychopathic version of the Master, and Jeffrey Beavers, all of which are very strong characters and have something different to offer from the role. And if anything at the minute, maybe Eric Roberts is just lacking that own personal twist on the Master, which who knows? Maybe we'll see that another point, time will tell, but at the minute I just need a little bit more screen time for him. But as it currently stands, I just need a little bit more screen time or audio time in order to kind of get a full opinion of his incarnation. And now I move on to the episode that I've been pretty much waiting for the entire review. The reason why I'm reviewing this box set in the first place is, of course, Concealed Weapon, as written by Scott Handcock, featuring the War Master, as played by Sir Derek Jacobi. Now, this episode is a rather nice little twist. I like the fact that it is the series finale because it does feel like a final episode, of course, one of the strongest incarnations of the Master, and Derek Jacobi is once again, I would pretty much say, near flawless. His character is incredibly consistent, and I have exactly the same compliments that I had for his character within The War Master Only the Good, Master of Callous and Cyber Reality. There is something about him that is just manipulative and callous and ruthless and evil, because we pretty much have a half-an-hour part of this story in the very beginning where he isn't even present, and you pretty much spend the entire running time of the first half thinking, when is he going to appear? I'm waiting, especially me, who is pretty much, as I say, listening to this entire box set for Jacobi alone pretty much, and then he does eventually appear, and his entrance is once again, he pretty much kills somebody within the first minute, which is what I expect from the War Master. He uses his laser screwdriver, and he is ruthless. I think Derek certainly does something with the role that is just unique and wonderful, and once again, I would love to see him back within the TV show at some point. It's a time-travelling TV show, literally anything can happen, so he should be back. He better be. It's a crime that he isn't. I think that probably one of the main reasons why the War Master, in my eyes, is such a success is simply down to Scott Handcock. Essentially, he is a gift to Doctor Who. He is an excellent producer and an excellent writer, and he basically understands the War Master inside out. He's pretty much had involvement with every single release that he has been in, and it does certainly show. I think that in the future, if we carry on with this exactly the same standard, I am more than happy for Scott Handcock to basically be a part of every single War Master release, because they work so well together. I imagine that behind the scenes, well, I think that it is quite obvious that Sir Derek Jacobi and Scott Handcock in fact have a rather nice relationship. Again, due to Scott actually writing this one, it leads to some really nice scenes, especially where the War Master actually meets River again. By this point, of course, River knows who the Master is from those previous encounters, and also the War Master has had those previous encounters. He knows about her character, he knows the way that she works, and he also has had time to go back into the past and learn her weaknesses, much like how we had in Animal instinct in episode 2, we had that whole idea that he failed to hypnotise River Song because she was too strong and her personality was so unique, and probably many other reasons as well. However, this episode seen Derek Jacobi in fact rewriting River Song's mind and actually manipulating her, and by the very end of the episode, in a way the Master does technically win and River Song doesn't even realise it, and that is what I like. That is what it is with this Master. He is powerful and he is pretty much probably the most difficult Master to in fact defeat. It is also to note that due to this episode featuring the War Master, it is in fact rather understandable for this episode to in fact have some link to the Time War, meaning that River Song in fact has a contribution to make to the Time War. And the great thing about this story is that it's not too big of an involvement to be that detrimental to the Time War, but it is still nice to see that River has in fact sort of dipped her foot into the Time War, even ever just slightly. And I think that this story is almost an open plot thread. We see the War Master in fact collecting together some cargo and basically manipulating the entirety of the spaceship that River Song is on, and basically he's using all of the people against each other, much like how this Master very much does. I think that trust is a big theme of his Master, trust and manipulation, and basically he manipulates people to do what he wants and turns people against each other simply for the fun of it, to cause chaos. He splits up a relationship, he murders people left, right and centre. Probably the most gruesome part of this episode is that he pretty much puts the cargo of what he is wanting to be carried from location A to location B into the actual females of the sort of spaceship that they are on, so they are kind of mothers in a way, or they are not giving birth, but they are kind of labouring weapon inside them without them even realising, which is a bit dark. And of course this Master doesn't even care, because he's that Master that's just, you wouldn't want to sit next to him on a bus or sit next to him in any circumstances for that matter. And that is that. That is all for Adventures as Seen on the Diary of River Song Series 5, featuring Jeffrey Beavers, Michelle Gomez, Derek Jacobi and Eric Roberts as the Master / Missy, along with Alex Kingston as River Song. Of course, I think that this is pretty much a one-off review, simply because the other episodes don't really interest me that much, even though one of them has Colin in, which I know, shock horror, I just don't really want to go back and listen to more River Song. I think that she was interesting throughout this box set, as I say, and it was nice to see her meet different incarnations of the Doctor, but I'm not necessarily, as I say, going to go out of my way in the future to listen to more. But that said, Series 6 does currently have a casting credit on it under the name of Christopher Benjamin, who does play Henry Gordon Jago, meaning that Series 6 is probably going to be one that I'm going to have to review as well, simply because it's Jago and Lightfoot related. And I have to, kinda, don't I, for completist reasons. And I miss Christopher and Trevor so very, very much. I certainly think that it is a nice set of adventures. I think that the ones that stand out to me in particular are the opening story with Michelle Gomez as Missy, and the final episode, Sir Derek Jacobi as the War Master. It's nice to have two episodes that are almost the bookends of the box set being the standouts, and the two in the middle are nice. As I said, I do really like the way that Roy Gill presents his stories. They are very intelligent, and I love the way that he was presenting the Beaver's Master to be very weak and vulnerable, but also at the same time very manipulative, and he definitely gets the Beaver's Master very, very well. And it was lovely to see Eric Roberts back, but I'm still yet to have that moment with him where I think, yes, he's the Master, he's phenomenal. He's certainly not at the level of Roger Delgado or Anthony Ainley or Derek Jacobi, or even, arguably, Alex McQueen. I think he's just lacking something at the minute. He's lacking that evil part of his character. At the minute, he's kind of just an American with an attitude, and probably that slicked back hair that he still had in the movie that he does have on the cover, which I couldn't help but notice. But yeah, that is that. I think that overall, not for everybody. If you are a classic series fan that wants to get into the River Song series, then perhaps this might be a box set for you, because every single episode has the Master in, which I suppose is a good thing. But also at the same time, it might be worth considering the previous box sets, simply because it has the previous incarnations of the Doctor in as well. If you didn't like River Song in Doom Coalition, and if you are strongly against her character, obviously I don't recommend this set. But if you are a new series listener who wants to get into Big Finish, all 4 of these stories, I think it will be fair to say, are fairly self-explanatory when it comes to the plot. They are rather linear, however at some point, especially within Animal Instinct and the final episode of the set, it can be a little bit complex in parts, so I think that certain parts of the narrative may be a little bit more confusing than others that may be worth granting a second or third listen to. So yeah, that has been my review of the Diary of Riversong Series 5. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this box set, then please do leave them in the description below, and I will reply to them at some point in the near future. And also stay tuned for more Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama reviews in the future from both the classic series and the new series. So yeah, stay safe, hope you've had a nice day, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.